Dennis, why don't we get started?
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki, and welcome to the 485th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and our 107th virtual Imagine program hosted by our wonderful cultural resource, the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thanks for joining us today. This program is created by ImagineLifelongLearning.com and the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, or Cezanne, as I pronounce the acronym, which is a digital enterprise and network designed to help link volunteers and lifelong learning communities like this. Today is the 5th Tuesday of the month, and therefore focused on the art of investing as we imagine a healthy, wealthy, and sustainable community. Before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted and our video turned off. Your video turned off. If you have a question or comment, you can type it into the chat box, and we'll go through them at the end of the presentation. Now, we are recording this program so you can watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page and their YouTube channel, and we hope you share the link with others. Now, on to our featured speaker, Stephanie Tisdale. Stephanie is currently a Senior Vice President, Strategic Initiatives Expert in Commercial Banking Strategy at M&T Bank. In addition to her strategy work, she also serves as a diversity, equity, and inclusivity DEI leader, having co-founded the employee resource group focused on environmental sustainability. In support of the M&T's 2025 diversity goals, Stephanie led M&T's Black Employee Journey Mapping Initiative. Stephanie earned a bachelor's degree in economics and accounting from Syracuse University and completed her MBA locally at the University at Buffalo. She serves as the board chair of 2 local nonprofits, Field and Fork Network, which we'll hear about today, as well as the Western New York Sustainable Business Roundtable. I'm sure that'll get mentioned as well. Stephanie is committed to progressively and actively supporting community sustainability in multiple facets of her life. We're also joined today by our 5th Tuesday co-host, J.D. Hartman, who is also a member of Western New York Sustainable Business Roundtable. So now let's hear from Stephanie Tisdale, our 5th Tuesday Art of Investing and our 5th Tuesday Art of Investing co-host, J.D. Hartman. J.D., take it away.
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks to the library. Really appreciate it. And Stephanie, thank you very, very much for joining us. Yeah, I met Stephanie at Rich Products. And we were both wandering the halls of power down at one of the iconic corporations in Western New York, and only to learn that Stephanie is Senior Vice President at M&T, and I'm like, okay. Then I realized she's the board chair for the Sustainable Business Roundtable. And at a later date, I come to find out she's the board chair of Field and Fork Network. I'm like, okay, here's a guest. Here's someone I want to talk to. So we kind of, anyone wants to join us, we meet at Public down in Lafayette Hotel for coffee and breakfast on occasion. We talk shop, we talk sustainability. And but before we get to, I'm going to ask Stephanie what sustainability means to her. I'm just kind of curious, because one thing, I don't know where Stephanie's career and work with M&T begins and starts, and where her SBR and Field and Fork Network. So I'm going to ask her, what influence does her career have on her community/nonprofit participation?
Thanks, JD. No, fun times at Public. I mean, knowing M&T locally and what it means and what it even means regionally, I would say my career 100% impacts my community participation. I work for one of the heaviest hitters when it comes back, comes down to giving back to the community, what it means in Buffalo, our, bases in Baltimore, across our entire footprint, our new family at M&T with the acquisition of People's United. We've added a bunch of members to the gang. And I mean, even if you're not focused just on M&T Charitable, the foundation itself, every M&T employee is doing their own thing to give back and doing their own thing to stay involved within their respective parts of the community. And I think that bleeds through in what I do, because what I've tried to do is take my skill set that I use in my professional life and in some way use it to make an impact in the world. So working in strategy for me, anyone who knows strategy work, there's a lot of delayed gratification while there are everyday wins. A lot of what we design and what we see, you're not going to see results for a year, 3 years, 5+ years, in some cases. So I wanted to understand what I could do with my skill set to make a more immediate impact and really see a difference. And I think that shines through with my SBR work and being focused on the environment and helping businesses become and stay more sustainable, as well as the work with Build and Fork that you're going to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah, thank you. Because, I'm in the business of assessing companies, not only for their financial performance, but also their performance around indicators that have to do with the environment, social justice, and open governance. And, M&T is a role model, not to, they don't need their horn tooted. They're not only a role model in sustainability, ESG, or this, hey, we're good corporate citizens. They just are. That's what it used to be called, good corporate citizens. They are.
Yeah.
Not all companies are. So it's interesting to see that then pushes you out into the community on your own. So that's really cool. Sustainability. I think Dennis said it's a big word, and there's a lot of concern out there about greenwashing around sustainability and whatnot. What does sustainability mean to you? And yeah, just what's it mean to you?
Yeah, for me, it for sure is a big word, and it gets used in a lot of different ways. I honestly, when I think of the word sustainability, I think of more questions. So how do we maintain a certain rate or level? Furthermore, how do we maintain that level without depleting our resources? How do we keep a healthy balance and potentially in a best case scenario, grow? So that's how I approach the word sustainability and how I contextualize any problem solving to determine some viable solutions. I'm not the type of person to put a Band-Aid over anything. I truly want to heal and grow what I can. So when I think about sustainability, it's how do we make this repeatable and how do we make it possible so that outside forces don't always have such a negative impact and that they're not always required as resources, and whether it's a community, an environment, how can it sustain itself? So that's how I think about sustainability.
Cool. Thank you. So we're going to start going toward your community involvement. When Stephanie and I met, we were at Rich Products for a sustainable business roundtable meeting. Just for quick background, the SBR is businesses, companies in Western New York that are looking to do well while doing good. And it ranges from the big, the 800-pound gorillas at the meetings are M&T and Rich Products, but then my company, Signity Financial, and local firms that we'd all be familiar with. Well, talk just very quickly about SBR before we segue to Field and Fork. How many members are there now?
We have. I should know that. No, I'm kidding. We have at this point, and we're in the midst of adding a few new members, but we have over 75 at this point in the community, which is huge because, like you said, there's the M&Ts and the Rich Products, and then you have companies with 2 employees, and they're doing what they can to make their impact. What I appreciate about the SBR is it doesn't matter where you are on your sustainability journey. We're there to help. So you could have been, shouting from the mountaintops since the 70s, and your company's been doing it, well and fine. Or you could say, hey, what's this sustainability thing? I just heard about it yesterday. Wherever people are on that spectrum of the journey, the SBR is there to be a resource, provide, education, provide tools and ways to keep these companies making an impact, primarily in Western New York, but obviously to scale that out and see further impact in every community.
Yeah. I experienced that. SBR has an annual, got to go to it. It's a must. It's fascinating and fun. But I was sitting at the annual event. I was sitting next to someone who was a guest and was wondering, hey, is this for me?
Mhm.
But up front on stage in comfortable chairs was Stephanie interviewing a bigwig from Lindy Praxair, and the discussion was around hydrogen and this, its potential as a fuel, an alternative, clean, green energy source. Really, SBR, and thank you for saying it meets the members where they are. You don't have to adhere to anything. So anyway, that's great, and I think SBR will be woven in through the rest of the conversation. But let's go to Field and Fork Network.
Mhm.
I'm a food guy. I'm a past president of Lexington Food Co-op. I'm current chair of the Urban Roots
Mhm.
Garden Co-op over at 5 Points. So I know Field and Fork kinda. Can you give us some insights of what the heck is this really important nonprofit in our midst?
Yeah, for sure. If I could take a second, I'll just throw up a slide that we can kind of reference while I'm covering this. So JD, give me a shout when you can see that.
It's all good.
All right, perfect. Yeah, and I really just wanted to show this visual to kind of incorporate the gist of what Field and Fork really is. But so I've been involved with Field and Fork since January of 2020. First board I joined, I was all excited, went to the January board meeting, then the world shut down. So we flipped to virtual and trying to understand, how do we as board members impact this wonderful organization in a virtual sense, like in the midst of the pandemic. But at the heart of the organization, what Field and Fork really does is they take a systems approach to developing impactful solutions and strengthening the food system. So we're in 29 counties across New York State, and we work with hundreds of partners. I can't keep up with the amount of collaborators who reach out to work with us, but some big ones are the American Heart Association. We really partner with on advocacy efforts. The Buffalo Bills Foundation, a lot of fun events with them, and even receiving state funding. So at a high level, what we really do is focus in 4 areas that you can see off to the lower left-hand corner. But I just want to highlight a few aspects so people understand like the type of impact that happens through Field and Fork. So we're probably the most known for, or what someone would recognize, is our Double Up Food Bucks program. So it's a program available to those who receive supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits, also known as SNAP benefits, and more widely probably known as food stamps. So that program is providing families a greater affordability and access to local fresh produce by stretching their dollars a lot further. It's really creating at the same time economic opportunities for local grocery stores, farmers markets, corner stores, and it's a direct investment in the local community for multiple facets. The community members themselves, as well as where they're trying to get access to fresh, healthy food. Healthy neighborhoods, I'll touch on. Our biggest accomplishment as of late is the revitalization of the Niagara Falls City Market and local food action plan efforts happening there. So Field and Fork actually recently took over management of the Niagara Falls City Market and secured $245,000 in federal funding. So that's, and even furthermore, it integrated SNAP and Double Up as accepted currencies. So this made the market that much more accessible to the community it actually serves, and even doubled the number of vendors that were able to participate. I think that's been huge. And I actually got to visit the market. It's a fun time. There was actually a car show, a classic car show when I was out there. You know, my mom came down, we had some other board members, and it was really awesome to see people in the community. You know, I think Buffalo needs to sometimes have that reality check of, it was amazing for me to be in Niagara Falls. And when people are saying the city, my city, it was, you know, they were talking about Niagara Falls. So it was a total, I had to catch myself and be like, oh, wait, like, yeah, like this is something to be completely proud of. And I understand the passion behind where they were going. So the Niagara Falls City Market and what we're doing out there has been like really close to my heart to see the revitalization occur in such a short amount of time. And then the last thing I'll touch on, because I think it's super cool, is the our youth development. So food pathways. We actually have a workforce development program that introduces high school students to career paths in the food system. So it also teaches them professional development skills. So we've partnered with Niagara Falls High School for I believe the second year now we're in, and we currently have 15 students enrolled in the program. And I mean, that's making a lot of traction, or getting a lot of traction. And even Lockport, you know, city schools have reached out with potential to expand out there. But I mean, at the end of the day, with Field and Fork, what I want people to hear in this message is more of like the goal to affect long-term sustainable change. So it's the education piece, it's the resources, it's the tools, and really just in terms of a call to action, it's showing people that there is more than one way to get out there. You know, get out there, donate, do whatever it is you can to offer. But this is, you know, just a few highlights of what Field and Fork as an organization is doing in terms of food access, food policy, and how we're trying to give back to the community. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah. Well, you know, to me, access to fresh, nutritious food is a human right. And, you know, and you know, it's in so many ways you're like, oh, you know, the basis of society, you know, our existence is food, clothing, shelter. So excited that you're involved in the, you know, the food movement in Western New York. Are you guys working with any of the other players like Buffalo Go Green, Urban Fruits and Veggies, or, you know, the African American Heritage Co-op or anything like that? Or are you guys, you know, really focused on your order of business?
So I'd say the main thing we don't want to do is any duplicative efforts. So you named, you know, some hitters that we work with, particularly the food, African American Heritage Food Co-op. We've partnered in the past and, you know, hope to continue to partner in the future. But what we're not trying to do is kind of step in and you know, push anybody off the pedestal of what is really their lane to stand for the change they're impacting. So we're taking more of the systems approach and allowing other folks to also, one thing I'm always saying is I'm like, I wish we had more volunteer events where I can like get out, get my hands on things. But when you think about it, we collaborate with other folks who are really leading that charge. And by attacking from the systems approach, even after, you know, the 514 and the tragedy here in Buffalo, we removed the double up cap, for example, was a huge thing. And it was at specific East Side locations. So people could stretch their dollars even further. So we're trying to really be, yes, boots on the ground to collaborate with others in the community, but at the same time, why are we really here? And we're here to see a little bit more through from the system side and make sure that there's a longer term change from the community impact rather than, you know, trying to kind of take over from what someone else in the community is doing. But collaborating partnerships is us all day.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of a theme. I think it might be you who brings it, although maybe you affiliate with organizations that bring it this, hey, we meet people where the, you know, members where they are. Hey, we let other organizations that we collaborate take care of their business, you know, versus crowding them out of lane. That's cool. Using one of your words. So before we go to Melissa and ask if there are any questions from the audience, please feel free to type in the chat any questions you have, and then Melissa will feed them on to Stephanie. You know, one thing that just I'm an old guy, man. I've been around. I mean, literally, I was sitting on train tracks out in Colorado, impeding the progress of a train that was bringing the mechanisms to build nuclear triggers for nuclear weapons back in the early 70s. So, and frequently I ask myself, are we making any progress? But I also, just a little context. So when my mother, so this isn't some abstraction, when my mother was born, women couldn't vote. So I know we are, but how about you, from your perspective out there working, whether it's in the corporate world or the community and whatnot, are we making progress?
So I'm probably one of the most impatient people. So I always want to do stuff much faster, much harder, much stronger. But even me in my career, I mean, I've been at the bank a little over 9 years. And so contextualizing when I feel like I started actually being a contributing member of society, I would say we are for sure making progress. Sometimes it feels like you wake up on a day and we've digressed or unfortunately gone a few steps back. But when it comes down to, the work at Field and Fork, the work with the SBR, when you're looking at metrics, when you're looking at data, even I have to stop and say, progress is progress at the end of the day. So JD, I mean, I haven't been sitting on any train tracks, but I hope, being the Spitfire I am in corporate America, that I'm shaking things up enough to do some of the same.
Yeah.
So,
well, thanks for your good work. Just an FYI, that day out in the plains of Colorado, a young person lost his legs sitting on that train track. So I know there's been a lot of sacrifice, whether it's right over here on May 14th in Buffalo, or that day back, and it was the spring of 74, I believe. But anyway, thank you. I'm going to ask Melissa if she has any questions from the audience. Love to hear from everybody.
Melissa, what do you think? JD, by the way, that great last question too. Stephanie, thank you for really summarizing an awful lot of work that both you're doing, but in the context of M&T and the private sector with the Western New York Sustainable Business Roundtable. Now, Melissa, how are we doing for questions?
We have one question so far. Does the SBR work with non-SBR member companies to promote sustainability? For example, attempting to dissuade outside companies from demolishing historic buildings?
that's a good question. So a lot of the SBR's actions are focused on being the most useful to or knowledgeable for our members. So learning the different, we have members who are in manufacturing, we have members in farming and agriculture. I think it's really our job to understand where they're at so we can do as much research as we can in order to know how to best impact them. With that, I do know we're always interested in not gatekeeping information. So we still do collaborate with folks in the community. I can't say we've saved any specific buildings. So I did like that part of the question, but I mean, it's definitely something for me to take back to the organization and think about how we're, interacting with that type of community impact.
Let me add to that one, because in many ways I've maintained over the years that preservation itself, restoration, preservation, conservation are all key elements of sustainability. Use things rather than just tear them down and build something new if you can. So that the idea of SBR inviting not just the private sector, but the not-for-profit sector, the Buffalo Niagara Preservation should be a member, and they can protect buildings because that's what they do, and you can just be that resource to knit everybody together. Just a thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And we do have some nonprofit members, but we definitely weigh a lot more heavy on the private sector side. So that is a good thought to take back.
Yeah, I really think so. That's a good question, because the SBR, just being an active member, as Stephanie said, doesn't really do a lot of advocacy work right now. But so for example, around the the Great Northern Grain Mill, the SBR didn't reach out to Archer Midland Daniels or the city on behalf of preserving that iconic irreplaceable building. Not to let my opinions be known, but anyway, but I think we're talking to the chair of the board right here. So maybe advocacy work is, a new avenue. But if not, the organization itself, like Dennis said, groups like Preservation Buffalo Niagara, if you ask me, should become members.
100%.
That was the only question we received, so.
Yeah.
You've got just a few minutes. The angle you were going at in not doing the work of other not-for-profits, I think is key. I think the community itself hopes that all of us are organizing ourselves in a way that we don't duplicate each other's efforts, whatever we're doing. So I really commend you on that. And I'm hoping this whole Imagine program is an attempt to at least be a platform for connecting all the disparate groups and helping us all become aware of the work that often quietly goes on beyond the headlines. Just good people, often usually volunteers, connecting in a way because the organizations help connect them. And that's what I sensed with your food program. Throughout the state, you're connecting an awful lot of dots, it sounds like to me. So hats off to you for that.
Thank you, Dennis.
And the bank. And the bank. I please don't, maybe you can't tip your hat, but I think between JD and myself, we can both point to M&T and saying, boy, one of our problems in Buffalo, unlike the Pittsburghs and the Clevelands and the other Great Lakes cities, Detroit, we don't have, I think that's M&T is the one S&P 500 home-based firm here that's made it to the big time, certainly across the East Coast. That culture that Wilmer's helped create and others continue on, the Stan Lipsys at the Buffalo News, all those people have really given us the community we're enjoying today. Our job then is to do the best we can to give it on to our kids and grandkids and others. And Stephanie, it's good to see your youthful enthusiasm. And I say youthful in a very positive way, as you can imagine.
Yeah. No, thanks, Dennis. I really appreciate that. Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I mean, the question I honestly get asked the most by people, because apparently I do a lot, and it's not until somebody like JD rattles off the list of things that I realize I'm like, oh yeah, I'm involved in that too. But people just always ask me, how can I help? As in, how can they help? And like I mentioned earlier, when talking about Field and Fork, it might be money, it might be services, it might be time, but I just want people to know that if they're going to get involved, they really need to care. Community involvement and making an impact doesn't come from doing something to be a resume builder or just to get your name on a board. It really comes from the circular piece of like when it comes back to you, how it feels. And I think that just means that people need to get more involved in what they truly care about. It's not that one cause is better than another, but if it means more to you, then at the end of the day, that's what you need to pursue. So that's what I'm doing.
Stephanie, I'll ask one other question on M&T's website for the bank. Does it make it easy for people to see how the bank is either supporting the community or point to, for instance, you and then your types of efforts? That to me seems like a missing piece. I was looking at M&T and I didn't easily find something to say, oh, here's what M&T does through its foundation or things it's supported. Do you know if that exists?
So that is somewhat intentional. I mean, you mentioned Wilmer's, and he was very much not, if we're going to sponsor an event, fine, we'll take the credit for that. But he was very much, the anonymous hand that's going to support something. And so I think that's very intentional on our part to not plaster our name across and take the credit for everything, but to like put the resources in the community that that need to be there appropriately. You can definitely find a little bit more about the charitable foundation itself, and what they've explicitly supported. But when it comes to the bank as an entity, I think we tend to shy away from the, commercialization of it, and more go the route of the resources are where they need to be from us. So
Cool.
JD, any any
No,
point you want to make?
no, that was wonderful. Good to see you, Stephanie. Thank you, Dennis, and the library as well.
Good, thank you. Melissa, that's it, question-wise?
Yep, those are the questions that we had.
Well, then we can wrap this up right in a timely fashion today. Folks, thank you again for joining us today. We'll see you back here on Zoom next Tuesday as we hear from Erie County Department of Health Commissioner Dr. Gail Bernstein on public health and health equity, which is informed by recent work from the Erie County Office of Health Equity. Well, it should be an interesting one. Hope to see you then. I'm Dennis Galucki. Be well and good day.